I don't know why, Alan. I'm laughing. It's our second podcast together, and everybody knows I love you like a brother from another mother. And I just laugh even at the ideas of us coming on and riffing on anything,
Right.
everything. Hopefully, people get as much out of it as I do. So it's a very selfish podcast.
It is selfish, but hopefully we get something out of it, too. Because I think if we can get something out of it, then maybe others can get something out of it too.
Right, right. Well,
You
the topic tonight is um, best lessons from our exes. And I was at first going to call this best lessons from our worst exes, just to be a little more literary about it. We're both writers. We're both in the writerly arena, and but well, I'm not going to name. We're not going to name names, but maybe we'll call them all X, Y, Z, A, B, C, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, or something. But anyway, we are going to talk about exes, and it really isn't that any of these are the particular worst. We're not poking that bear, but we are just bringing up what are things that we've learned from expired relationships. They ended for a reason,
Right.
but we learned something at some point. What do you think?
No, I think that's it exactly. And one of the things we mentioned earlier was, did we learn that lesson early on, or did we only learn it now that we're talking about it? Because that is a key differential. Because I think when, especially, right after breaking up with someone, it's easy to blame them for the end of the relationship, to
Mm,
harbor a lot of anger, resentment towards that other person, and to think of ourselves as not only the wounded party, but um, the better person, right? Oh, look at me, I'm better. I walked away from this, and I'm the better person. If we didn't learn anything, we're just doomed to carry it into the next relationship with us, and that's the
yeah,
problem.
yeah,
That's
doomed
the
to
problem.
repeat. Just like the history meme, like we're just doomed to repeat it over and over again if we haven't learned from it. And to
Mm.
clarify, hi everybody, it's Sean Cardinalli, sex and love addiction coach, talking again with my brother from another mother, Alan Herring the third,
The
Thurston
third,
Howell, Thurston Howell.
the third.
Alan Herring is yeah, dear friend, uh, uh, masters in cultural studies,
Yep.
writer, short stories, novels. Are you getting the fucking memoir about India out yet? I'm gonna bust you right now in public on blast. These again, we jump on the podcast because Alan and I can sit down and just do this and riff. And he's always telling me stories. That's how the first podcast came about. He just started to riff on this date he had, and I was like, "That's a podcast. Fuck you, let's record." And you told me a story about going to India, fucking like 5 years ago now,
Yeah.
pre COVID. And I'm like, dude, write this fucking thing down. You will sell 1 million copies. It was just great. It was just a great
Yeah.
observation.
I will make a promise to write it this year. How's that?
Ooh,
How's that?
excellent. You've got 10 months. Actually, you've got 9. That's still
Yeah.
plenty. That's still
Yeah.
plenty.
Yeah. I'll
You're
do
not what's the fucker's name who does Songs of Fire and Ice? You're not
George
J.R.R.
R.
Martin,
Martin. No.
right? Who takes like 8 years with one novel? I'm like, bitch, if they gave me the money, I would be banging out novels. Just boom, there you
But
go.
he
Boom,
doesn't
there you
need
go.
to. They
Bang.
gave him the money. That's why.
Okay. All right. That's why. All right. All right. All right. So, okay. Got that commitment. And again, that's awesome. And that's why we're talking today. This is all relevant rather, to Single on Purpose, because we're going to talk about experiences we had with our exes. And then whether immediately after the fact, we're single. Of course, I don't think either of us is bouncing around, hopping around relationships or beds or any shit like that. We both come from a 12-step recovery standpoint and therapy, respectively. We met in the 12-step rooms. So I think it's fair to say we've, gained some fucking awareness in both of us. 14, 15 years, right? A little bit of awareness, a little
Yes.
bit.
A little bit. A little bit. But I,
Why are
the,
you laughing?
oh, because this thought popped in my head. I was thinking about how I can be a very poor communicator in relationships, and how uh, I'm not always clear. And it's something we talked about the last time, how I can leave things a little bit vague. And I recognize that that is a problem that I've had with all of my exes, um, is not being completely clear with what I think or feel. Um, and I was thinking about this guy who I broke up with, but I also wrote him a letter trying to get him back. And I don't know if you told if I remember telling you that like I had sent him the letter before I broke up with him so that he was going to get the letter after.
Wait, he was going to receive a letter
He was
saying
going
I
to receive
break
a
up
letter
with
from
you?
me. No, he was going to receive a letter from me of why I liked him and still wanted to go out with him after I had broken up with him.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
You made the call beat the mailbox, and did he
exactly.
receive it after you dumped his ass?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
we were just talking about this. So there are recurring. So there are some things that there are lessons that we have to keep relearning. It's
Yeah.
something there's something like in your relationship craw that is
Yes.
stuck. What do you
Yes.
think that is? Why do you think that you have? And because again, I'm not trying to sound all like arrogant, but we 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 practice well, we practice dating, which was the
Hmm.
last podcast. We also practice self care. We have learned to grow our awareness, and none of this is perfect, y'all. Like, I'm not
Right.
like dusting off our shoulders right now or anything like that. I'm just saying, as opposed to someone who's never gone to a therapist, never gone to 12 step, never had to face their issues, their
Yeah.
peccadillos, any of that, why do you think that that one peccadillo travels with you? And did it travel to your most recent? I won't say the person's name, but the one that I'm thinking of, like in the last year or so that you
I would
dated.
say yes. And I think it goes to, well, one, being gay for me.
Huh? Why?
I think because for a long time I held on to that secret, right? So there, it's a
Mm,
secretiveness on my part, um, and it's a secretiveness to try and remain independent, right? So it's like um, not getting lost in the we. We do this, we do that. Like I don't want to become a we. It is probably one of my biggest fears, is that we do this on Sundays. We do that. It is one of my biggest pet peeves. Um,
why is that?
I think because um, I like myself a lot, right? I like myself a lot, and I don't want to lose a sense of self in the other person.
Mm.
And so for myself, I confuse we ness with um, true union of a relationship. I
You're
think.
confusing codependence and interdependence.
Yes.
Yeah, like you
Yeah.
don't want to be codependent or enmeshed and over like
Exactly.
all that fuckery about you can't even shit by yourself without like
Yeah.
the person being right there, like brushing their
Right.
but but you also but you also are proud of, and again, I'm gonna keep bouncing off our 12 step experience. You're also proud of how you've grown as a man, as a gay man,
Exactly.
as a person who can
Exactly.
who has forged out of the fires this really
Yeah.
particular, and I mean, I love you, this unique personality and character, and
Yeah.
you're like, fuck that, like it's almost like you're jealous of your own. You're like, no, I'm gonna hold on to that jealously. I'm not. That's not
Right.
somebody's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's very interesting because like uh, it I recognize that it is a secretiveness that I harbor, and part of it I know I say being gay, but I think part of it goes more to being um, abused as a kid uh,
Mm.
by by that priest. It was more of a,
Survival mechanism.
I think, as a survival mechanism, learning how to keep parts of myself, like that compartmentalization that occurred at an early age, and it just carried over into adulthood and into part of my person, as like hiding parts of myself, hiding things, you know, um, how I really feel, what's really going on, all of that. And I think that that is one of the biggest impacts from trauma, childhood trauma. That's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, scar that I still carry to this day.
That is
Yeah.
really I I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever heard that from you. I've known you, a decade and a half.
Yeah.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
and it carries. It's so potent that even to this day. So again, to reiterate for folks who don't know who the fuck is talking, you're talking to two mixed black men who came up in the last decade and a half in the 12-step sex and love addiction circles and got sober. We both have around the same sobriety too, about
Yep.
like 5-6 months apart. So
Yeah.
about 14 years
Right.
away from our inner circle or bottom line behaviors, which means the ones that got us in the rooms, almost got us arrested, got us nuking relationships, fucking almost, almost in quotes. We'll just let that go. We'll just keep going. We only have 45 minutes, Alan. Jesus Christ. One one topic at a time. I was being nice, brother. Dude, you're fucking you're you're telling on yourself. And so the reason why I think this is such an interesting share from you is because we do have this framework. We have been taught from those who know better than us and healthier than us, and now have our own sponsees or friends or
Right.
people, or we're sharing in retreats or conventions, or with groups with our groups of folks about, oh hey, you can do this more healthily. Right? You don't have to go to
Mhm.
porn, unsafe sex stores, whatever, like married people, right? You don't have to do any of this illicit shit, just be healthy. And so yet you have this, tension from the stuff that is predates even
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah.
addiction.
And well, it does, because it's not even addiction related. That's the whole thing. I mean, it, it is characteristic, like learned behavior at an early age.
Yep.
And I think that, like, most relationship issues are learned at an early age. So it's how our parents interacted, it's how we saw our older siblings interact, what we learned from, you know, Disney movies, all of those things.
Media,
But I
TV,
think
MTV.
yeah, it's in direct response to our personal traumas at an early age is how we then carry that forward into all of our relationships. And whether or not, because I can look at each of my relationships, starting from, you know, one of the earliest ones with an ex that I did love him like a lot. And I can still see how I was unable to fully let him in, fully let him in.
And
And I
you
just
also weren't.
remember, it's what?
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. You remember?
Oh no, because I was going to say I remember this time he was at my house. My parents were coming over, and I was having a nervous breakdown introducing the two of them together. And then my parents
Introducing
showed
your
up.
parents and the boyfriend.
Yes,
Okay.
to each other, right? And then I was an asshole to him, and my parents were like, "Why are you being an asshole?" Right? They said that to me in front of him, and he's like, "Yeah, you're being an asshole to me," and I knew it. I knew I was being an asshole, and I could not stop it. I could not stop it. You know?
Wow, dude. I have got to. That's fucking potent. That is the definition of coming out sideways. Like you
Yeah.
could not stop like the emotional diarrhea coming out of your ear, just in your
No.
mouth. You're just like, and let me share two things. I was going to share a different X that was related to what you were talking about, where I had to keep learning the lesson over and over and over again.
Right.
But instead, I'm going to go back to my ex-wife because it relates directly to what you're talking about right now, which is something that I didn't catch. Now, I wasn't addicted to her. I was plenty of times. We know that I had to work on my rage right alongside my addiction, my sex addiction and love addiction and porn addiction. But that rage came from my childhood and came from the scenarios that I saw my parents in and perpetrating and treating each other and treating me, some hellacious shit. Some like literally our dirty laundry was laid out there, was hung out there for the entire city community
Mhm.
to see, and it was fucking mortifying, right? So I had a lot of rage from that. I'm like, oh good, not only is our home life shit, but now everybody knows our fucking home life. So when I went back with my ex-wife, one of the first times I brought her back to California, which is Northern California from Southern California, where we had begun dating. I'm not quite 30, and she's like 6 years younger than me, so she's like early mid 20s. And I went and brought her home and introduced her to the parents, and probably had said plenty about them before and sort of set the stage. You know, mom's a painter, dad's in mortgage. And so you can hear how I'm talking right now, right? When I was there and introducing her, I was up here like this the entire time. Hey, look, this is my dad and this is my mom. And she was looking at me like, what the fuck? And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, why? What's that? It's like fucking, you're sucking on helium. Like, are you? And you know what it was, brother? It was my fucking anxiety and fear.
Right.
And it wasn't going to come out as rage. It was going the opposite way. I was like escaping to the back of my brain. And the only thing it was almost like I didn't have enough air. So there's little airs coming out, you know, it's like squeaking out like a fucking mouse, because the main, you know, of the two, the person I would have feared more would be my dad. And, so I'm like, I'm bringing someone who I really care about, and it's new. I'm also in my active addiction at the exact same time. So I'm already juggling that and like, you know, how much do I like her? Do I like her? Is this going to last forever? What about the porn? Am I going to get caught? She's already caught me. Right. So all that shit has already begun. That mania of the addiction, right? Like just self-sabotage after self-sabotage and sabotage.
Right.
But very particular, like it went out sideways toward your bow.
Yeah.
With mine, it was like it went sideways, it like inverted into myself, and I couldn't. My shoulders were up like this, and my voice changed. And you know what we say to this day, because my favorite is a sourdough bread, because I'm from the Bay and outside the Bay, right? So I love sourdough bread, and my dad brought like French bread, not sourdough, but French, a little more particular, right? And he's like, hey, look what I got for you, Sean. And this is in front of my girl at the time. And I'm like, and this is the joke that we have. It's a sad joke though. We're like, hey, thanks, Dad, for the French bread. That's my ex and I will, to this day, we can laugh, right? It's a little rueful, and it's also right. It's a little rueful, but it's also, thank God, it's 20 years past that, and I'm sober, and we know it was ridiculous, and we know why. I was talking like fucking Mickey Mouse. So that's a lesson, you know. She pointed it out to me, like on that trip. I was like, I was talking like a fucking clown. What? Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful that they pointed it out, because I knew it. Like in the middle of it, I knew it. And at the same time, like I said, I couldn't do anything. And my mom is just like, I just asked him if he wanted a sandwich because I was making sandwiches. What the hell is wrong with you? And I can still feel like my pits are like sweating profusely. My mouth is dry. I'm like dissociating from myself. And I'm saying, why is this occurring right now? Why am I doing this? I like this person a lot, right? From the first moment I met him, from the first moment I saw him, not even met him. And yet here I am. And because of my own fucked up head, that relationship like never really actualized into its best potential.
How long did you last?
Oh, we were off and on for like 8 years. And
what?
Yes.
Brother.
No. You know him. You know him because like I finally deleted a text from him when we were in California. We were in Oakland.
That's this guy.
That's him. And I will say that I was the dick in that. I was the total dick in that. And yes, he had his own trauma and he had his own dramas that he was dealing with. But my own, like, not only secretiveness, but still just like, because I was also like into porn a bunch then at the time too.
Were
that
you
it
going
was
into
like,
stores then?
both, everything,
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
It was just,
Okay.
so it was like, but it was more of like my inability to be intimate with another person.
Yeah, of
That,
course.
that is what caused that relationship to ultimately fail.
So let me. We don't have time. I'm not gonna fuck with you about the 8 years, and I'm gonna chalk that up. You're like, shut the fuck up! Don't like fucking diagnose me. I'm gonna chalk that up to the addiction too. Like even staying with it, but it didn't reach its major potential. But you're still
Right.
staying with it, right? Is that a function of like codependence or love addiction?
Well, I think so, but it wasn't like by the end, it wasn't like a, it wasn't, like a constant thing, right? I mean, by the end, it's like tapered off. And so like, I wouldn't even say that the last few years were even anything of significance. It was more of um, like it was active codependence at the end on both our parts. And so
Okay.
I wouldn't even call it like relationship. It was more of like two codependent people who are addicted to each other, who were in love with each other. And it just never, like each of our own traumas never allowed it to become what it could have been.
My
And still
my
holding on to that.
my therapist would say, "You never had a fucking chance." Right?
Oh
He
no.
always used to remind me of that. Every time I was like, why? Fuck, and I wanted to self-flagellate. He's like, dude, just rest assured you didn't have a chance because of the addiction, because of all the programming, because my
Right.
neural pathways were zigging instead of zagging. And
Yes.
I want to set the stage really quickly. We got to get to like at least one other relationship each or two within like 20 minutes. But I do want to
Yeah.
set the stage and then have you finish this thought. My perspective of you deleting that boyfriend, that 8 year long relationship that ended in codependence fuckery. You and I are in Oakland, California, near Jacqueline Square, if not on the square, and we're
Mhm.
taking a lunch break from a sex and love addiction convention, right? And we're newbies. We're both in like you
Both
were in
newbies.
like weeks before me, like so. I think we're like 6 months into it, right?
Right.
Into our this is the first 6 months of the 14 years, everybody that
Right.
like I always talk about. Like I got 14 years. Next year I'll be telling you I got 15 if I make it.
Yeah.
And we're sitting down at lunch with one or two other addicts, recovering addicts, and you take out your phone and I don't think that you had considered yourself sober yet based on the illness, the sickness of this
Right.
particular relationship. And
Right.
so I was sitting there fascinated, but not in like a car crash way, just like rooting for you quietly. And you sat there staring at this phone. It's like a fucking movie. It's like a
Yeah.
fucking scene from a movie. And we were just sitting there going like, do what you need to do. We're here for you either way. And you were sitting there staring at the fucking cell phone with his info on the screen.
Mhm.
And you're like, I can't delete it. I can't delete it. So that was my experience. I had like hair, but the hair on my arms was raising because here we are, like in the throes of like, we're gonna get healthy. And now I'm going back to like my anxiety voice. We're gonna get healthy. We're at the convention. We're doing the thing, right? We're at the
Right. Right.
very
We're
beginning
doing it.
of
We're
our
doing it. Right.
new of our new life, our
Right.
new lives in recovery. Different, trying to do it differently.
Right.
And you were stuck on this. God damn it! Do I delete this guy? What's your recollection of like your version of that? Because that was powerful for me, dude. That was powerful
Yeah.
for me. That's also why I have 6 months on you with fucking sobriety, bitch.
It's true. It is. I mean, he was like the last of my inner circle. Um, and I think, the hardest thing was that love component of it,
Mm,
right? Because it was like, it was being able to say, hey, I can still love this person even though I'm not with them anymore, right? I can love them and not be with them, and that's okay. That's okay. And so it, like, there was a whole bunch of stuff going through my head, but the biggest thing I think at the time was just kind of like, I don't want to keep having the same relationship that he and I have had. And at the same time, we can't go forward. We just can't go forward. Neither one
mm-hmm.
of us want to go forward because we've fallen into a pattern of, um, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you.
It's like
That,
borderline.
yeah, that rote sequence that we've become. And so I remember just like that, plus the sound of his voice. It's like you hold on to a message to play it over again, and then you get rid of it, and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna make a break, you know.
Yeah, it was
Um,
powerful.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
fucking powerful. And what you're sharing reminds me, one, I can segue nicely into another one of mine, and then I want to hear who you're going to drum up next. But what you're sharing reminds me of what the alcoholics initially called, and they're the original 12 steppers, the moment of clarity. Like you're
Mhm.
just, maybe not hitting bottom, like a lot of people just smack right fucking hard into the bottom.
Right.
But it sounds like almost you were just like, and then you delete it, and you're like, this is
Yeah.
what I have to do. This is what I have to do to
Right.
move on. Like you're saying, so it's powerful, fucking powerful experience. Seriously, I've shared on that before. At like another retreat or some shit, I've told my version, my viewpoint of your story, and I think a lot of what we're talking about too is taking responsibility, which we also learned in 12 step. Right? I always
Hmm.
use the analogy. Relationship is three sides, and using the street, right? Their side of the street, my side of the street, and the yellow line in the middle where we meet as partners in
Hmm.
relationship. And I can
Hmm.
take care of mine as best as possible, and then I can also do the upkeep at the middle line. But I didn't know any of that before getting into 12 step.
Right.
I didn't know anything about the constituent parts or like what can I take responsibility for and what can I handle
Right.
and
Right.
not. You know, or to your point about codependence, what's their part? Like, okay, you know, I feel for you. I know that you're going through whatever you're going through, but that's yours. Like I can support you, but you've got to work on that. That's something
Hmm.
that whatever you're sharing with me right now, that's something that it, my part in the middle in the relationship is I will support you if you need to go to therapy, if you need to go to church, if you need a different job, but also you have to do the thing. I will support that. I will root for you. I'll do whatever, but I can't make you do anything.
True, but that is what you do in a current relationship. I mean, we
Right.
have to remember that like exes are exes for a reason. I mean, they are. They just are. Whether it's their fault, our fault, we
Both.
fault, right? Who
Right.
or both fault, right? I mean, it ended for a reason, you know, and that is sort of like, you know, my most recent one. Um, I think what I learned from there is not to lose myself in the we. And I know I lost myself in the we.
Mm.
I know it, you know.
Can I just say one thing about that? You know I love you. I didn't see you for like 2 years,
Right.
and that wasn't COVID. So really,
Right.
almost four. I probably saw you more in COVID because once you're broken up by the pandemic,
Right.
then he
No,
bailed.
we broke up in within just after the pandemic.
Just after
Mhm.
the 2 years, or after like the door closed in March of 2020. Like, what do you mean?
No, so the pandemic like really ended what 2021. That's when we ended. Fall of 20.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. But yeah, dude, and I know we know each other enough. I'm sure you can be like, yeah, well, bitch, you were like this in this relationship, you know, and you can have your little thing. But dude, I missed you.
Yeah.
Because we hang out a lot. We write. We're writing partners, and if we're not writing together as partners, we are just writing across from each other on our respective shit. We critique
Mhm.
our own shit. We're both mixed. We have plenty to say about that and those experiences.
Mhm.
There's plenty of nonfiction stuff that we can like fly out. And we're sitting here on a fucking podcast going like, hey, everybody, want to hear what we have to say about exes and what you can learn from like expired relationships.
Mhm.
And at the same time, like, dude, I missed you. I missed you for like 2 years. I was like, okay. And I think I would, and I take responsibility, but I do think I put a couple shots across the bow. And then it was like, all right, well, this is the season. This is the right. What is it? Season, reason, or lifetime, or some shit like that is
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
learned. And it was the season. And I know I told my kid's mom, I was like, God, I don't really see fucking Alan anymore, but you know, keep trying. You would talk about him. You would talk
Yeah.
about the guy, and whether it was positive or negative. And I heard a lot of negative. I was like, oh, dude,
Yeah.
you know, is
Well,
it right for me to say like opine? And I kind of didn't. I just kind of bit
yeah.
my lip.
Well, you know, I mean that's the whole thing is like I think like I said, one of my biggest fears was that whole we, and I recognize I became a we, and at the expense of myself and friends, everything like that. I
I just
do know.
realized I just realized I put you on blast like internationally just now, and I didn't mean it. Really, where that was coming from was, brother, was that I missed you,
Yeah,
and I knew that you were going through it,
yeah,
but I didn't really know. So I will take responsibility again, but not really quite approaching it and just like, hey, you want to hang out or whatever.
yeah,
But I did. I saw less of you, and you're saying that that's kind of how it
yeah, yeah. And so it was. I will say though that like what I learned from my that the first one that I was talking about, where it was like trying not to compartmentalize my life. Where I did compartmentalize it was friends. So like I opened family up into my relationship, but now I have to learn how to open friends and family into it,
went.
and
Mm,
that's it requires a level of vulnerability from myself that I know I have to practice in my next relationship.
mm, okay. So
I just know I have to practice it in the next one.
right, right. It's interesting. It's almost like, would you say that you almost the very thing you were worried about, then it looks like you did sort of perpetrate that you the dial did go too far, and you were like wrapped up in the we. So was
Oh
it like
yeah.
an overcompensation? Is that what you're
Oh
saying, or
yeah.
no?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
completely. Completely.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know. And like for a whole other thing, I mean, that is it's getting older. It's, being in a, gay relationship and what all of that entails and everything like that. Which uh is different than being in a straight relationship. And so there's all of that. But one thing that I will pride myself on is throughout all of recovery is the dating practice. I
Hmm.
practice, you know,
Hmm.
like the one in between, you know, again, it was dealing with that same part of trying to be present for another person, introduce him to my family. So that worked, everything like that. But again, it was like being vulnerable with another person. It took me a while, and to this day, still learning how to be vulnerable with another person.
So which is right, which is the fucking trick, which is and for folks listening, we're talking about lessons we learned from exes, and in a way, you can be single on
Well,
purpose
I'm
for a
talking
while.
about lessons learned from exes.
Well, brother,
I'm
if you
just
would
saying.
give me,
I'm just
if I could get a word in edgewise, I just you just bounced to your third. I've barely talked about one, motherfucker.
saying. That's not on me. That's all on you.
I was gonna link. So were you just talking about a number two in between the first and the most recent?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So when you were talking about your God, who are you talking about? One lesson I had was about being love addicted, and I started to identify as a sex and love addict, not just a porn addict, sex
Hmm.
addict, not just the visceral. It would be hard. I'd take too long to try to explain the nuance, and I've done it in classes. I don't know if I could do it right now, but the distinction that I make between my sex slash porn addiction and my love addiction is really where it sits. And sorry to get like chakras and whatever, but really it feels like that. It feels somatic and it feels energetic,
Hmm.
both. And so when it is sex addiction and it's that visceral, it's like a muscle, it's like a charge that gets really compulsive and repetitive, like a little puppy. Like where'd you go? Like chasing the new shiny thing, like over and over and over and over again. Right? There's that compulsivity, that
Right.
repetition too, that mania. Right? Love addiction, like it washes over me, and I
Mm.
have these. It like hits my belly, not like my fists or my manhood, not my groin, but it's like this and it's heavy and it's very emotional, so it's not, so it's still powerful but not like that viscera, more like it's like I get overwhelmed. So for example,
Is it
the
love or is it longing?
Well, I would construe that together as opposed to just need a hit, which is what I construe the porn and the sex with. Just get that hit, right? As
Hmm.
opposed to the longing that you're talking about, that sigh and that and jealousy and like sort of a swirl of heavier, like melting emotions, right? Like a
Hmm.
morass or a swamp, right? That I'm trudging through and feeling all at once, as opposed to compulsive, like let me pull over and go get a hit of the porn or the person or the sex or the whatever, right? Let me pull over and just handle this. It's different. It's very different. And
So
I'm going to keep working on making a verbal distinction or a writerly distinction between the two, but that's what I can bring up right
yeah,
now.
okay, but like with so what X comes to mind when you think about the love? Was it? I mean, it wasn't like
It was
stalking the shadows of the person looking at them, but it's like sitting at home pining for her.
so what happened was it's the first person I was with in recovery and after divorce. And like I may have shared the last time we were talking, I was made to take a year off, put myself on the shelf, elf on the shelf, for a year
Mhm.
by both my therapist and my sponsor at the time. I was like, "You motherfuckers ganging up on me? What the fuck?"
Right,
But it
right.
was brilliant, right? And it was very much single on purpose. You're going to sit and be with yourself and go do things with yourself or with your friends or platonic people or family. You're not even going to worry about getting out there on that level. No
Hmm.
physical, no romantic emotional, all the other emotions, you're just gonna just you're gonna surrender, the other stuff. You're not gonna do it. You're gonna learn how to be with you. And because in a way, because I had the crutch of the marriage, so
Hmm.
it's like, ooh, I'm doing this for myself, but I also have that extra little like incentive, like don't fuck up the marriage too. And then when the marriage dissolved and it needed to, good divorce,
Right.
I've said that over and over again. Um, I was on my own. It's like, let me get out there, motherfucker. Right. Like I wanted to go out and just boom, let's do this. Let's be like fucking, Jim Carrey and Bruce Almighty or whatever, just fucking like blow the doors off of every room I walk into. And they're like, nah, you're not going to do that. So when I finally, a year and a half, I almost took even more. I probably took somewhere between 14 to 18 months. And then I dated someone, but I
Hmm.
really liked her and I went right for her, like beeline, and probably was sometimes emotionally unsober, which is kind of, people are like, what the fuck is that? Just not breaking my rules as far as my recovery and acting out that way, but not
Hmm.
always being level-headed, even emotionally level-headed, right? Just kind of the tank was a little tipped to
Right.
excessive feels. And again, when she broke up and she shocked me with a breakup, I I've told you this story before. We're literally like playing hooky. Let's stay in, have sex, have breakfast, spend a day. It was a gorgeous day in Albuquerque, and let's just go play hooky for a day. And she agreed,
Right.
and then broke up with me at the lunch while we were playing hooky.
Mm.
And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I said it out loud because she said she was going to go back to her ex, and this ex was a
Wow.
fucking disaster. Yeah, and the ex was a fucking disaster. So then I was like, maybe I'm dodging a bullet here. Maybe you're a
Right.
disaster too. If you
Right.
want that, as opposed to, frankly, I'll stable ass, and now I am like dusting my shoulder off a little. I'm like, oh, okay. And she still wanted to talk about it like later on, and I was like, you broke up. Like the minute you said I'm thinking about going back to my ex. I was like, okay, you go think about that. I'm not
Right.
fucking waiting around for you
Right.
to come up with some plan or decision.
Right.
So when she did do that, I remember like within a week of the breakup, I pulled up to get like a Starbucks or something, and there's a salon right next to it, nail salon or whatever. And I'm looking right at her. I pull up, and I'm not expecting to see her anywhere in my view
Mm.
or world, like we're done, right? But I was in her neighborhood, so maybe again, not like I don't know. I did start to have like those, ooh, should I drive by and see if she's home things? And ooh,
Right.
I
Right.
wonder where she's. And then one day she was there in the salon as I pulled up, and I broke a sweat. And I texted all you motherfuckers on like the text thread
Hmm.
that we have, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so triggered right now. So that's what I mean by like love addiction. And I think I found out from that relationship, A, I identify as a sex and love addict, and B, to respect that this isn't just about porn, 2D, visceral, fake, false sexual and unhealthy outlets, or just little
Right.
quick unhealthy like sexual ventures. But I've got to watch my codependence or overzealousness. And that's kind of a weak word to use, but I'm using it in the context of like addiction. Like I've got to watch being too enmeshed and still have my own, like I felt like I was losing my person
Right.
toward the end. And then when I had that reaction after the breakup, and I was like, whoa, there was much more to process than I think I thought. And so I wanted to give the addiction, like sometimes I've said, Alan, I respect the addiction, not like I want it, not like I would choose otherwise,
Right.
but it had me in such a thrall, and it
Yes.
almost destroyed my life, that I was like, well, I got to respect it a little bit, even though I'm surrendering it one day at a time, because look what it did. Look what
Well,
I
yeah,
did at its service.
that's it. Well, I agree with that. I think that like for any addiction, I mean, there's when you name it, admit it, then you can start overcoming it.
It loses some
Un- un-
power.
yes, until you, but there's a claiming, like an ownership in that when you say I am this, right? When you say I am that, you are taking um, control of it in a way that is not like saying, oh, I have power over it. It's just saying this is now a part of who I am,
I
right?
admit it.
I admit it. I like I think maybe a couple of times I might have driven by an ex's place, but I don't I don't put myself in their neighborhoods, um, like in a place to go and run into them. They just occupy space, real estate in my head, where
Mm.
I think about them, right? And then I like sometimes I compare them to people I've currently dated, or I think about them in terms of like what could have been or what might have been. I don't know if that is like the love component, but that's just where they occupy space in
Do
my
you say
head.
sex addict or do you say sex and love addict?
Well, I don't think of myself as a love addict because um
Even though it's painted behind you right now on the wall.
well, I
No, that's
painted
real love. I'm fucking with you. Yeah.
oh no, I painted it to remind myself to love
Oh,
others,
nice.
to
Okay.
love others, to allow myself to be loved, all of that.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
I have issues with love. I do. Um, and that's from all of my exes, but that's also from my family. That's all of that is like I being loved by other people um, makes me incredibly uncomfortable. It
Mm.
makes me
Mm.
incredibly uncomfortable, and it activates all of that secretiveness that was there. Right?
When you
It's
were in
almost
active
like
addiction,
it's what?
when you were in active addiction, all the secretiveness, or even
Yeah, but I
predating
think
that.
well, I think it's even beyond that. I think it activates the parts of me that think, "Am I lovable?"
Yeah.
Um, so all of that, right? And it's something that I work through with my therapist because it's like I said, it is a direct result of trauma. It is a direct result of that it broke my ability and capacity to love because I don't know if I could like even though I might have told my exes I love them, the full understanding and magnitude of loving them was not something I felt until after we had broken up.
Mm.
Until there was no more possibility of us being together. Then I understood what it meant to actually love them.
So this is not a trick question or a gotcha. And we know each other's context in the rooms where we met and became best friends. But does that mean it isn't the insinuation or it isn't then the sort of, Jesus Christ, I'm forgetting all my words. Doesn't that mean or insinuate that maybe you haven't been in love yet, or it's that you in true love, or whatever the fuck that is, or does it mean you only? It's like you don't know what you got till it's gone. You're all Motley Crue in it, or whoever the fuck sang that in the '80s.
I think it's part of that, but I think it's like not allowing myself to admit this is love.
Mm,
In its most mundane,
mm.
right? Love in its most pedantic, its most mundane, its most um, boring, boring.
Just being in it,
Just
like
being, yeah, yeah,
right.
just being in
Okay.
it, thinking that like it should always be fireworks. It should always be,
No.
you know, and but really being in love is more of like um, you're in it, you know.
Mm.
Uh, James Baldwin in Giovanni's Room has the best descriptions of love I have ever read,
Oh man, I wish you can go
ever,
grab the book.
ever read.
You want to go?
And
You want to end this? You want to end this podcast? Not now, but when we do in like a couple minutes, even. You
yeah,
want to?
yeah.
We can take a pause, and you can even go get
Oh,
it
I
if
don't
you
know where
want.
it is. I
Oh
don't know
shit.
where it is.
Okay.
Dude, I have so many books here. I don't know where it is.
I was say Google it or something. Google a line.
Oh no, it's just his passages in description of love, of what it means to be in love, the feelings of love, what it what it does inside, and so that's something that like we should talk about more because I didn't hear it or understand it when you were talking about what it means to have love addiction because there's an emotional component to it that to me is like when you call something when you say oh I love them I love it or I have a love addiction is it like a is there an ache associated with it is it longing is it um, wistfulness jealousy envy all of those things right that comprise it and so when I think of all my exes I can say that I've loved every single one of them. I can look back and I'm thankful for my relationships with them. I'm a better person now because of my relationships with them. And I hope that in my next relationship, I can be better to him than I was to them.
Mm. I don't think we. I think we need to like fucking end the podcast on that because that's why we were talking today. What did we learn from our
Mm-hmm.
exes? And I'm going to do a tongue in cheek title of this podcast. And again, like best lessons, best in parentheses, and from our worst in parentheses exes, or just leave out the two parentheticals. But again, tongue in cheek because they're over, they're expired relationships for a reason, like we've said repeatedly. But thankfully, we walked away with something to learn, and exactly like
Mm-hmm.
you said, carry on. The way I'm navigating my current relationship, um, I could not have ever been this sort of open to conversations, open to conflict, open to its opposite, like love making, vulnerability, literal and emotional nakedness. No way without what's come before. Both
Mm-hmm.
the recovery work that we've done respectively and together, and um, the awareness that comes from the recovery, which allows me to do what you just did, look back at everybody and go, oh, okay, look at those lessons and carry them into the next one. So I think that's a beautiful fucking ending, friend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. I think,
Yeah.
it
Until
stops right
next one.
there. Yeah,
Yeah. Until next one.
that's right. We'll see you next time. Thanks for sharing your stories as usual, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I love talking with you. So yeah, next time let's do some more.
I was thinking before right when you were going through your spiel, maybe our next one is on the 5. Sometimes the websites say 9 definitions or types of love. In Greek, the Greek words. That'd
Mm.
be interesting. But anyway, we'll just leave
Yeah.
that. We'll just leave that there and see if folks want to chomp at that bit. But thank you for your time, brother.
Yeah. Thank you. You have a good night.
You too.
Okay.